ISSA. My name is Tyler Palmer. I am 26 years old. I am currently a certified personal trainer working in the Edmonton, Alberta area. I specialize in working with elite athletes, specifically hockey players, and I'm also the owner of Total Performance Fitness. So for today's video, I will be acting as both the athlete and the coach. I'm going to be training myself as a hockey player, which I was for a very long time. Our position in our current training cycle, we are going to go with early season to make it kind of very realistic to what's going on with most associations, most players right now. They're kind of just getting going, obviously with the restrictions in the world right now and COVID and everything else. So for our training program that we're currently in, it is a 4-day split. We will see 2 weightlifting days. One will be lower body strength focus, one will be upper body strength focus, with mobility and core work as well. And then on our other 2 days, we will see agility, plyo, and speed work. So for our session today, we'll be working on that day 1, lower body strength with some mobility and core. All right, so for today's training program, the layout's gonna look a little bit something like this. We will begin with a warm-up, around 5 to 7 minutes. It will be 4 exercises done in succession, circuit style for 3 rounds. Those 4 exercises will target getting the hips warmed up, making sure the hips are moving through their full range of motion, as it will be largely a lower body focused day. There'll be an exercise targeted on activating our glutes and activating our quads, as those will be 2 of the big muscles we are using today. Hamstring activation will be as well, and then finally we want to make sure that we're elevating our heart rate and getting that body temperature up and getting our muscles warmed and making sure they're primed and ready for movement. All right, so first exercise in our warm-up is going to be a resistance band air squat. This exercise is great, I find, for warming up the glutes, helping activate the hips, and then obviously just delivering some blood to those tissues that we're going to be working a little bit more intensely through the workout. So exercise number 1, resistance band air squats, we'll be doing for 12 reps. So lining up for this exercise, okay, we want to have that band just above our kneecaps on the leg. Preferably you want to have medium to heavy resistance in the band. Feet are going to be just outside of shoulder width apart. You can point those toes slightly outwards. We want to make sure we have our shoulders back and down. Our back is neutral, our core is braced, and then we are going to hip hinge, so pushing the hips back, keeping that spine neutral, dropping down to where we can have our butt just below knee level, and we want to have these upper thighs parallel. So it looks something like this. Big deep breath in on our lower, just below parallel, and then breathing out when we're coming up out of the squat. So again, feet shoulder width apart, toes pointed slightly out, core back is neutral, dropping down, driving those knees outwards to activate those glutes. Butt is just below knee level, thigh is parallel to the ground, coming up nice and tall. I'm flexing the glutes at the top again, pushing out against that band at all times is very important with this. Make sure warming up the right tissues, getting those hips involved. All right guys, so next exercise in our warm-up is going to be a walking lunge into a hip pull. So a 2-part movement. I like this movement a lot. It's really great for warming up the hip flexors, which hockey players are notoriously known for having bad, tight, weak, inefficient muscles and hip flexors in that area. So how this exercise is going to work, basically we're going to start just standing nice and tall. Okay, we're going to go down into a regular walking lunge, making sure that my knees are not going over my toes. Okay, I want to have a nice firm plant with my heel. I'm dropping that back knee almost to the ground. My chest is nice and tall. Shoulders are back and down. I'm going to then stand to tall again, where I will take same foot to same hand, pulling that heel back towards my butt, get a nice big stretch in the quad, as well as in my hip flexor. I'm going to hold this 2 to 3 seconds. I will then release that same foot. It will then step forward, again dropping that back knee almost to the ground and repeating the motion on that same side, holding 2 to 3 seconds. We're going to perform 8 repetitions on each leg, so that would be 16 lunges total. Next up in our warm-up, exercise 3 is going to be a single leg glute bridge. Again, really great exercise for warming up those hip flexors, and then obviously we're going to be targeting our hamstrings as well, as they are going to be playing into some of our movements today. So to start this exercise, we're going to lay back flat on our exercise mat. We want to have our feet coming out from our butt at about 45 degrees. Okay, hands can be flat down on the mat beside you. We want to relax our shoulders, making sure our head, back, and butt stay in contact with the mat right now. And then from here, we are going to take one leg. I'm going to keep it in line at knees and stick straight out. From here, I am then going to engage my pelvis. I'm rolling my pelvis underneath. It will turn my core on. I'm going to push my hips up till I'm in a nice straight line from knees to shoulders, making sure spine is neutral, my core is braced, okay, and then lowering back down. We're going to perform 10 repetitions on each side for this exercise, making sure we're breathing throughout. All right, guys, last exercise in our warm-up. One of my favorites, again, for hockey players, we're going to be doing a lateral skater hop or lateral skater bound for 8 reps each side. It'll be 16 jumps total. Again, it's a great exercise for warming up the hips. And then in addition, for this exercise, just kind of creating a little bit of awareness in our feet, a little bit of awareness in our ankles, and bringing some stability and activation into those areas before we get ready for some of our heavier compound lifts moving into the workout. So how this exercise is going to look, okay, we're going to start on one leg. We want to get into about a quarter squat depth. My chest wants to remain tall. Okay, that back leg is going to end up coming behind before our takeoff. So it can just go drive straight back from that hip to start. Quarter squat on this one leg. And then we want to have our arm motion mimicking how a skating stride would be. So in this case, if I'm looking to transfer my weight from my left to my right arm will come across to facilitate some of that weight transfer and that core rotation when we come across in that jump. So down into my quarter squat, I'm going to reach behind with leg and arm. Chest is still tall, spine is still neutral, core is braced. Okay, and then I'm bounding, landing and sticking on that other leg and jumping back. Very important that when we're landing, that we really want to cushion so we're not losing our balance. Kind of like I did there, I'll go one more. Reaching behind and then cushion using that squat to make sure we're not losing our balance. All right, so we're gonna move into the strength portion of our workout now. We always start with our compound lifts, our heavier lifts, our multi-joint lifts, just to make sure that our body has as much to give strength-wise as possible before we fatigue it doing our other movements. So barbell back squat's gonna be our first movement, compound lift. We're gonna perform 3 sets of 10 reps with a 60-second rest in between each completed set. So for this programming, those sets, rep and rest ratio, essentially we're training for strength maintenance, not so much gains in strength like I spoke about prior to this. And typically the weight would be a little bit more than this for what I'd be lifting in that reps range. I'm just trying to keep it a little bit lower so I can still talk through it while I'm explaining to you guys, so I can be the athlete and be the coach at the same time without running myself out of breath. So I would typically be lifting more in the 185 range for this exercise, just based off of a 3-max of about 355, 365, just so you guys know that the programming is constant with what I'm talking about. It's not way off. So a couple key teaching points for this exercise first. Hand placement on the bar largely varies on the individual. It can depend on their arm length. For me, just an easy rule of thumb, I go thumbs just outside of shoulders. Feet placement will be shoulder width apart or slightly wider, as I like, again, because I have longer limbs, and toes pointed slightly out. So when we line up for this back squat, okay, I'm gonna find my hand placement. I'm gonna step myself under the bar, making sure that my heels are in line with the bar. The weight's gonna be centered over the balls of my toes. I'm then gonna lock my elbows down and in. Bar is gonna rest right on my traps. Stand up. Get my feet placement. Okay, then from here, I'm gonna take a big, deep breath in. In my lowering phase, I'm making sure my core is braced, my spine is neutral. I'm looking to get my upper thighs parallel to the ground, and I'm trying to get my butt just below knee level. Here we go. Nice and even tempo on the way down and the way up. Giving the glutes a nice big flex at the top. Not allowing my knees to collapse in on the way down or up. We would complete that for 10 repetitions, rest for 60 seconds, and we would do it 2 more times for 3 sets total. Okay, next of our compound lifts, lift number 2, or exercise number 2, is going to be the power clean. Great exercise for hockey players, again, developing explosive power, especially from the legs, which is super important for our first step quickness, our change of direction on the ice, and just being overall powerful in our skating stance, which is very similar to what our start position would be in this movement here. Again, just for the purpose of me being able to talk while I'm doing the exercise, using a little bit lighter weight, but this would be programmed the same as a load as our max. Probably want about 50% of our 3 rep max, so it'd be a little bit heavier than this here. So to start the exercise, we are going to line up our feet approximately, our shins, 1 inch away from the bar. Feet are going to be shoulder width apart, and we want to have our toes pointed slightly out. Again, for my hands, I want to be just outside of shoulder width, so I'm going to reach down and grasp that bar just outside of shoulder width again, and I'm going to lower my butt down while maintaining spine neutral. Knees are driven out, my shoulders are back and down. First part of the exercise, my first pull, I'm going to have the bar move up, my shins nice and close, okay, to the knee. That'll complete my first pull. My hinge is nice and flat still, back is nice and braced. From here, as the bar slides up my hips, I'm going to forcefully thrust my hips forward and forcefully shrug my shoulders. That's going to initiate the bar moving upwards to well there. I will then be able to catch it. So again, from the floor, we'll go through. Hands just outside the shoulder, bar is 1 inch away from the shins, spine is nice and neutral, butt is back. We're going to go up, past the knee, as the bar rolls up, thrusting, shrugging, and then I'll move into my catch, which I will talk about after. So, here we go. To finish, we would roll forward down to the hips and lower back to the start. So I will perform 2 more reps so you guys can see the catch and our landing. I'll talk about it first though. So at the peak of my shoulder shrug is where I want to then rotate my hands under the bar, getting my elbows up nice and high so I can catch right on my delt, right on my clavicle. Foot position can be slightly wider than we start. And then to return the bar back down, I'm just going to roll the wrists over, use my hip as a bit of a brace, and then lower back down, just like as if I were doing a deadlift. So here we go. Okay, and we would perform again 3 sets of 10 repetitions, taking a 60-second break in between each set. All right, so next we are going to move in one of our 2 supersets. This particular superset of 2 exercises is going to focus on unilateral leg strength, like I spoke about, which is super important for hockey players. So our first exercise is going to be a single arm carry, unilateral Bulgarian split squat. This exercise is awesome for hockey players to build not only strength in the lower body, but also balance, which like I spoke about is super important for them. So to start this exercise, you're gonna wanna grab your dumbbell the same arm the dumbbell is holding, that's the same leg that's going to go back on the bench to start. So you're going to take a step back, find that bench edge where you can comfortably tuck your toes so they are flat on the bench and the top of your laces is right at the edge. I'm now going to adjust my other leg to where my heel is just ahead of my lead hip. From here, hands are going to face the weight back towards me. My shoulders are backing down, chest is nice and tall. I want to make sure my movement pattern is very straight up and down. I don't want to be leaning forward as that will bias the quads. And we want to make sure that the glute is still getting worked in here as well as the hips. So to start my motion here, chest back nice and tall, core is braced. I'm going to slowly lower to just before my back knee touches the ground and lift straight back up. We're going to perform 10 reps on each side. Okay, just like that, we'll perform both sides before we move on to exercise 2. Like I said again, this is exercise number 1 of our first superset, so our rest will be taken after exercise 2, which I'm going to tell you guys about next. Second exercise in our first superset is going to be a single arm, single leg deadlift. Again, another great exercise for hockey players because of the unilateral strength and the opposite sides of the body working at one time to make sure that we stay balanced. Oftentimes when we're playing hockey, we find ourselves with one leg extended out, one arm extended out, and an external force coming from that opposite side. So making sure that we can keep that core neutral, our spine neutral, and being able to balance with limbs exposed or extended is super, super important for us. So for this exercise, we're going to start, lift our weight up, same position as our Bulgarian. The weight's going to face back towards us with palms pointing back, and we're going to have the opposite leg that is planted is the arm that's working. So my first initial movement is getting my hip hinge backwards, and my right leg is going to begin coming off the ground. Now, very important that I want to keep shoulders even while I'm doing the lowering of this phase, and we want to aim to get that dumbbell somewhere about mid-shin level. So to start the exercise, I'm going to start extending my foot back. I'll feel that nice big pull in this hamstring. Back is nice and flat. And I'll slowly raise back up again. Feel that contraction in the glute at the top. Again, we're working for 3 sets of 10 reps on each leg. And following the conclusion of our other leg, we will then take 90 seconds rest for our superset before we start back with the Bulgarian split squats again. All right, guys, so for our second superset of the day, our last little bit of the strength portion, we're going to work on a little bit more of a dynamic strength exercise, curtailed to hockey players, those last two. First one we're going to work on is our goblet, dumbbell, lateral banded lunge. So again, great exercise. With this exercise, the finished position in a lateral lunge is the ideal skating stride. Nice and low, our back leg is extended out. And then this power band is just going to give a little bit of an external stimulus. Again, making sure that our core muscles are bracing properly and we're able to find that balance just like we would on the ice. So for this superset, again, we're going to work for 3 sets. We're going to go for 8 reps per leg. We will then move on to our second exercise in the superset, and then following that, you guys will rest for 90 seconds again. Okay, so to start the exercise, I've just got my medium resistance power band looped around our rack here. I'm going to step through the middle, and we want to place our band just above our hip bone. Okay, making sure that we have no wrinkles. I'm going to reach down, grab my dumbbell, hold it in goblet position. Elbows are nice and tight, keeping that weight nice and close to the body. Okay, from here, I'm going to take my step out. I want to land my lead leg just slightly ahead of my trail leg to mimic that skating stride as much as I can. So I'm going to take my step out, and plant that foot. Okay, now from here, I'm gonna sit my butt down into that stance, making sure my knee is tracking same direction as my toes. Back is nice and neutral, back leg is nice and extended just as it would be on the ice. And then standing back up to tall. Again. And we would perform 8 reps of that on each. Okay. So last exercise in our strength portion of today's training session. This is also the second exercise in our last superset. So again, same rep ranges here. We're going to be working for, different rep ranges. We're going to be working for 12 reps on each side, doing the same amount of sets, 3 sets. And then after the completion of this exercise is when we will take our 90-second rest. So we're doing single leg hip extensions with our stability ball. Again, great exercise for hockey players. When we're in our skating stride, there's a constant flexing and extending of the hamstrings repeatedly. So making sure that that area is strong and getting comfortable with that repeated motion is a great tool for hockey players to help strengthen their skating stride. There's no need for any external weight here. Body weight is normally enough of a stimulus, especially when we're training in season for this exercise. So start the exercise, we're gonna get down on our back. Our working leg is going to be flat on the ball with the ball fairly close to our butt to start. Our other leg is going to end up coming up straight off the ground. I'm gonna brace my hands down here. Okay, core is engaged, my back is nice and neutral, shoulders are relaxed. Okay, my first motion is going to be to lift up into that glute bridge. And then from here, my start position, I'm going to extend that leg to straight, keeping my core nice and tight. It's going to help with the balance. Okay, and again, we're performing 12 reps on each leg, and then we will do 3 sets of that. At the conclusion of each of our supersets, obviously we're resting for that 90 seconds. And next I'm going to take you guys through our little bit of our core work. So we're going to move into our core work now. We've finished the strength component of our workout today. So our core section is going to be 3 exercises done individually for 3 sets each. And I will denote the reps as we go along for each of those 3 exercises. So first one we're going to do is going to be a half kneeling cable wood chop. Having a strong foundation for rotation through the core on hockey players is super, super important, as most of the time, you know, obviously we're on skates and our legs can only move in a fixed direction at once. Our blades, I mean, when we're gliding. So a lot of the movement with our stick and our body and our shoulders, shooting, passing, stick handling, stuff like that needs to come from a strong core and being able to rotate that core efficiently. So for this exercise, I'm using a medium resistance cable. We're gonna be working for 12 reps a side. To start, I wanna have my outside will be the lead knee. And again, I wanna have that heel just underneath that knee. This knee is gonna be just underneath my inside hip. Shoulders are back and down. Okay, my core is nice and engaged. Okay, I'm going to grasp the handle at chest height, and my start position will be straight out from there. Now from here, I'm going to take a big deep breath in, and I'm going to chop straight to 90 degrees, only rotating with my core. Hips should be very still. Nice and slow and controlled back in. Okay, and like I said, we performed 12 reps on each. All right, guys, back for exercise number 2 of our core circuit. We're gonna be working on a full kneeling PowOff press with the cables. So another great exercise for building core stiffness and being strong through our core when our arms are extended, which they often are in hockey. So to start this exercise, You're going to want to be about the same distance away and about a similar resistance with the cables, medium resistance. And we're going to have knees centered right under our hips, just outside of shoulder height. Okay, I'm going to grasp that handle at chest height, just as I did. And I'm going to put out, I need a little bit more resistance on here. So we're going to come straight out, core is braced, spine is neutral. Okay, I'm coming down, never making contact with the body, and then I'm raising straight up overhead, keeping the natural arch in my spine. I don't want to arch back a lot. Breathing throughout, trying to make that cable follow a nice straight line, up and down. And we're going to be performing again 12 reps on each side, and then taking our 60-second rest right after. All right, guys, the final exercise in our core circuit for today is going to be med ball Russian twists. Again, a great rotational core exercise for hockey players to build that strength through the obliques and the serratus. One of my favorite core exercises as well. So to start, we're going to sit down on our butt. We're going to have our med ball. I usually choose to program these a little bit heavier, but just because they're at the very end of our workday, I chose to go a little bit lighter on the load here, but we'll keep reps fairly high. So we'll be doing 10 repetitions on each side. So every time I make contact with the ball, 1 and 2 will count as 1 rep. So for a total of 20 taps or 10 full repetitions. So my start position, I want to keep my elbows nice and close to my body. Okay, have a good firm grasp on the ball. I'm going to hover up into that V-sit. If at any point you're getting pain in your lower back, that's where we want to posteriorly tilt that pelvic girdle, engage that core, protect that lower back from any straining or any compression. So I'm going to sit up into that V-sit. I'm going to extend only with my arms. I'm keeping my core nice and solid to the front, coming back over just like so. Lower body should be nice and quiet, not a lot of movement. Really emphasizing that crunch on each side, squeezing into those obliques and serratus, and breathing throughout. Again, at the end of our repetitions, you'll rest for 60 seconds before doing our next of 3 sets. All right, guys, so that wraps up the work portion of our session today. Next, we would typically go into a cool down and then work on some of our flexibility and mobility. For cool down, typically we would do either in our complex that we have here, we'll do a 2 to 3 minute walk, or if the weather's not permitting as it is right now, we would have the athletes hop on a bike, 0 to 3 resistance, RPMs above 75 for again 2 to 3 minutes, just to get some of that lactic acid out before they sit down to get their stretching and their mobility work in. So moving to that portion, we're going to have 5 movements in our flexibility mobility portion here, and I'll take you guys through them now. All the reps are going to be the same. All the holds are going to be the same in terms of, and then we don't really need any rest in between. We're just going to kind of move from exercise to exercise. So to start, first one we're going to do is just a kneeling quad stretch. So we're going to have our lead heel underneath lead knee, our trail knee underneath trail hip. Hand can be there for support. Then we're just going to reach back, grab foot, and we're going to walk with our hands back towards our butt, keeping our spine nice and tall. We're going to hold this stretch for 30 seconds on each side. We're going to perform 2 sets of this exercise, just as we are the rest of our mobility and flexibility movements. So at the conclusion of our 30 seconds, we would switch sides. Again, make sure always that we're breathing while we're doing our flexibility, mobility movements, all movements obviously. Next up, a little bit more dynamic. We're gonna move into a dynamic rock back with a pigeon stretch. So this is kind of a 2-part mobility and then flexibility. Great exercise for flexing or stretching the hip flexors, and then getting kind of deeper into the glutes and the hip extensors. So how it's gonna work, we're gonna frame hands underneath shoulders, shoulder width. And then from there, we are going to jet one leg straight out. Very important that toes and heel are pointing forward and back straight, and this leg is nice and extended. From here, we are going to rock back toward our heels, keeping arms extended, spine long, for 1, for 2, for 3, and on our 4th, we are going to sweep and reach and sink into that stretch. Should also get a nice big stretch up the obliques and the serratus and into the lats. We will hold here for 30 seconds, and then we will perform the same movement on the other side. Again, we are doing 2 sets of this exercise. Following that one, we are going to move into a passive 90-90 hold. I'll show you guys this way just so I can stay on the mat. So 90-90, we want to have both of our angles from our thigh down to our shin at 90 degrees, and then we want our chest to be nice and tall. Spine is extended. I want to be actively driving knees and heels into the mat. And we will hold for 30 seconds on each side. Make sure we're breathing throughout. At the 30-second mark, we normally do a dynamic switch where we look to get this hip into some external rotation as we rotate to our other side, where we would then hold for 30 seconds. Again, we're doing this for 2 sets. Apologies, my camera cut out right before the last movement. So our last movement is going to be quadruped hip cars. Cars of any kind are my favorites to do a lot of the time with athletes. Just always making sure that they can get their joints through their full range of motion. So quadruped hip cars, we're going to start on all 4s. Hands are going to be underneath shoulders at shoulder width. Knees are going to be underneath hips at hip width. And from here, we'll take our working leg first, which will be the straight outside leg. We are going to come up, hip flexion, out, hip abduction, circumduct, adduct, and then extend back. Reverse that motion, really taking our time, trying to follow that joint as close as we can. We'll perform 10 reps of that exercise on each side, again for 2 sets. Right, so that is the end of our training session today. Just want to say thank you to everyone at ISSA for an awesome course, super immersive. I thought it was really, really well put together, and I learned a ton, and I'm super excited to be advancing my knowledge in a field that I'm very, very passionate about. So thank you guys for putting together such an awesome course. I hope you guys are able to follow me while trying to coach and be the athlete and kind of switching back and forth between the characters. But obviously, given the climate in our world right now, we have to make the best of this situation. So thank you guys very much. Hope to see you or hear from you guys soon.